Good evening, everyone, wherever you might be watching around the country or indeed the world. Goofball Antics continues to eke out a championship lead over the Pink Pigs. Ziras has awoken, and after winning the last two races on the bounce, he heads to his favourite circuit on the championship as a very real contender. My absolute pleasure once again to welcome Matt Dunlop if I can get my words out, Matt Dunlop to the box alongside myself, Stairs, bringing you all the action tonight. Good evening, Matty.
Good evening, Stairs, and good evening to everyone watching along at home, wherever you may be around the world. Welcome to Portugal. Welcome to the Algarve and the Autodromo de Algarve, also known as the Portimão circuit. It's really a very, very interesting track, and there's a lot of aspects of this circuit that are going to catch a few of these drivers out. I was having a bit of a practice run earlier in one of the Ford Capris, and there's some very hairy elevation change around here. It's going to make things quite unpredictable, Stairs.
Absolutely. There's a lot of corners that go over crest right through the middle of the corner, which is an absolute recipe for disaster with these heavily turbocharged cars. Any steering angle whatsoever, and the car will swap ends on you very, very quickly, and you'll be going straight to the scene of the accident, as Martin Brundle might say.
And of course, given the complete and utter lack of downforce for the most part on these 1970s and 1980s cars, it's very hard to maintain grip through some of these crests. If you're going through a dip through one of these corners, it definitely helps you get that contact patch on your front tyres a lot wider so you can get a lot more corner speed through there. But some of these corners, in particular turn 5 and turn number, the exit of turn 9, which we'll detail a little bit later on, are absolute nightmares for some of these cars, and they do force you to throttle off and really get fully in control of your machine.
Have a quick look at the points situation as we head into the eighth round of this championship. And Goofball Antics, through enormous consistencies, not being off the podium throughout this entire season, holds a 19-point advantage over Sam Smith, who's had a couple of nightmare races in recent times after a strong start. Couple of wins to Goofball Antics. One win to Goofball Antics and two to Sam Smith. And Ziras also last week getting his second victory. 2 on the bounce, and that moved him up ahead of Berto into third place and very much still in the championship hunt. Berto's not with us tonight and has missed the last round and will miss more rounds. So unfortunately, looks like his championship bid is going to come to naught, with Madbird angling for that 4th place behind him on 80 points. Resist is showing a very, very strong run of form. Got his second podium last week, and 2nd place, his best result. He's looking for number 1 as well. Brenton Foley in 7th place, just 3 points adrift of him. Roadhog in 8th place ahead of Pablo, and Nether rounding out the top 10.
So that early DNF in the season for Ziras at Renault really made the rest of us forget how much of a quick driver he is and how quickly he was going to be able to get back into this championship hunt. Because in terms of the championship points count, he's really caught up, as you would have seen earlier. He's only 4 points off the back of Sam Smith. And on this recent run of hot form, he's really starting to show us in these last few races what he can do behind the wheel of that BMW 320, which I must admit, at the start of the season, I had no idea was going to be as competitive as it has been so far. I thought the Porsche 935 is going to utterly dominate all of these tracks, and it has for a lot of the part. You know, Sam Smith has been very consistently finishing well. He's had not great results considering in his last 2 races, 5th and 4th, which is still, solid points hauls, but he's been on the podium almost every other race. So it's a very fast car, but the BMW 320, in the hands of both Ziras and Goofball Antics, of course, our championship leader, who's also steering one of those, is really working wonders around a lot of these circuits that these cars are visiting, Stairs.
It certainly is, and the fastest time in this practice session was Sam Smith about 5 minutes ago. He set a 1 minute 40 flat, but Ziras in the last few moments has eclipsed that by 0.3 of a second to go fastest, and that's an almighty time. The first time that we've seen that's a sub 1 minute 40, and that's going to be worrying news for Goofball Antics. He doesn't we have talked about him as being a bit of a qualifying specialist, but he doesn't necessarily have to have a very strong qualifying session to get a good result. His race-winning performance back in Belle Isle came from, if I'm not mistaken, about 7th or 8th on the grid. So qualifying won't be his focus. He needs race pace, and he hasn't beaten Ziras in a race since the 5th round in Watkins Glen, with Ziras winning both of those races. Goofball Antics not having a bad result, finishing 3rd in both of those races, but he can't afford to bleed that many points. He needs to finish 2nd at least if Ziras wins the race to stop Ziras from eking back that championship advantage that Goofball Antics has.
That's exactly right. But one thing that Goofball Antics is very good at doing is keeping out of trouble. Although he has been caught up in a couple of unfortunate incidents here and there, it luckily hasn't compromised any of his races so far, which is why we've been able to see him on the podium at every single race so far this season, which is fantastic consistency. And it's down to not just the skill of Goofball Antics, but also a little bit of luck as well, because these cars are very tricky to handle, can behave pretty unpredictably in certain circumstances, particularly on starts, when we have some interesting start issues happening with some of the narrower circuits. But here at the Algarve circuit, it's a very wide main straight with a little bit of runoff to the left-hand side, so there's plenty of room to get around somebody if they bog the start down now. I'm not sure which car you've got the camera on at the moment, but I just wanted to make note of the part of the track where Sam Smith just went through. On the braking zone down into turn 1, there is a huge drop-off in the physical topography of the circuit. And with the heavier cars, such as the Porsche 935 and the BMW M1, Sam Smith gets right up on 2 wheels on the exit of turn 5, which is another one of these circuits I want to touch on. You lose all grip in these heavier cars because you've got all that weight just trying to go straight on, not too concerned about gravity at that point in time. And it's making those guys very, very difficult for them to get on the brakes effectively into turn 1, which would arguably be one of the best braking zones on this circuit. But it's really going to play into the hands of the lighter cars, such as the BMW 320 and possibly even the Ford Caprice Airs.
Absolutely. It's wherever there's a change in either elevation or lateral direction, the heavy cars struggle just a little bit, and there is evidence of that with Resist, currently sat in 3rd place, just spinning out and exiting back to the pits. The track map for this circuit, it kind of looks like someone dropped a piece of spaghetti on the floor, and that is basically the kind of track that the 320s do like, back on your point there. But there is a long straight down the start-finish where those Porsches will need to make up as much ground as they possibly can. But that extra time that they'll spend in the pit lane is going to be costly, so it is looking very good for for Ziras and for Goofball Antics. But Goofball Antics in that session, I think he got dropped down to 5th in the latter stages, and he wants to be a little bit further up. He would ideally like to be finishing no worse than 2nd to keep that championship points deficit as big as he can.
Well, we're just starting to see the first car roll out for the qualifying session now, and I'll just give a quick reminder to everyone how the qualifying format works if you've forgotten or if you haven't joined us before. If you haven't joined us before, welcome to Apex Rear Wing. Hope you have a good time. Qualifying is a 1-lap shootout. So each of these drivers gets 1 out lap where they can warm everything up and get to grips with the track and the car in the current conditions, and they get 1 chance to put together 1 flying lap to set their grid position. If they post even 1 track cut anywhere around the circuit, their lap time is completely nullified and they start from near enough to the back of the grid. So for a lot of these guys, track cut avoidance is the most important thing. So a few of these guys, it may be in their best interest not to necessarily aim for the fastest time possible and go all out, but to just make sure they keep it on the track, even if that means they have to sacrifice some speed. We're just seeing Rhodey go through the exit of turn 5 on his out lap, and if you're not slow enough on the exit of there, you have to really modulate your throttle there through that section, because 1, it goes over a crest, so you have to keep your grip, you have to keep as much traction on the road as possible as you're going through that left-hand bend. But also, the edge of that circuit approaches you really quickly as you drift to the outside, and if you get all 4 wheels outside that white line, that's an instant track cut violation, and we don't want to see too many of those in qualifying, because we want to see as many of these 13 cars as possible post a lap time in qualifying, don't we, Stairs?
Absolutely, and those track cuts have been an issue at almost every round of this championship. The one round last week in Hollowham where we didn't think it would be too much of an issue, it still reared its ugly head. We did see cars losing times due to cutting the track, so I don't think any track is immune to it. Maybe a street circuit perhaps, but I'm trying to remember whether it was an issue in Belle Isle. That was quite a long time ago. but certainly it was a very, very big issue at circuits like Watkins Glen, Montreal, and even Hollowham, where there isn't asphalt runoff. This is one of those circuits where the track cuts in some parts can be quite liberal. I heard people talking about the first corner as being a corner where you could take the mickey just a little bit, but other corners like on the exit of turn 5, not so much. So we're seeing now Rhodey come down to start his first lap, or his only lap of this qualifying session, down into turn 1, and he described that earlier in the week as being like the inverse of Coda as it goes downhill instead of uphill into the first corner. Now this is turn 3, and now you're not mistaken, you didn't miss a corner. That was just because there is another variant of the track where there is a chicane there, and turn 2 is on that part of the track. So it goes turn 1, turn 3, then turn 4. Now coming out of turn 5, that corner is very, very tricky for the elevation mid-corner, and then there's very sharp braking zone into turn 6 and up over the crest towards the corner that we've discovered, Matty, is called Craig Jones.
I think Craig Jones comes a little bit later on in the track, I'm afraid. This is just turn 7 leading to turn 8. Two of the most docile...
I beg your pardon, I was looking at the map as it tracks...
But turn 9, this is one you have to keep an eye for, turn 9, because as you go over this crest now, you have to make sure you're not if you keep your foot on the pedal, you have to modulate your throttle to be careful, and you have to make sure you're not having any steering input going in one direction or the other. Because if you've got too much steering angle or too much throttle, you're going to spin off the track, whether you like it or not. And it's very interesting to see that on a relatively straight piece of tarmac, top-down wise, but the elevation change is that dramatic that you have to be super, super careful through that turn 7. And we did miss Rhodey going through the Craig Jones bend, which is the left-hander after turn 9.
Yeah, sorry, just to cut in on that. Turn 7 is on the opposite part of the track.
He's thrown away his outlap. He spun it on the infield of the final turn.
He doesn't want me to finish my point, does he, Matty?
No, he really doesn't. Let's see if he can get some pace up. This last corner is not full throttle in the Capris, so he may just be able to get a good shred of pace up as he goes into the final straight. That car's looking pretty shaky, though. He's got to straighten up, and he's on the final straight now, up to 5th gear. He's just finishing his lap. He's starting his lap. No.
He's finished it, 158.5, and crashes the car into the wall in frustration. Now, to finally finish that point, the Craig Jones corner, turn 10, is on the opposite part of the track to turn 7, so it folds back on itself, and on the map they're very, very close to each other, hence my mistake. Now Bang's having issues. Getting it all spun out. Hasn't even got up to turn 5.
No, he's not having a great time at turn 4 at all. The Lagos bend, as it's written on our circuit maps here. He's trying to go through that turn 5, and he's rotated it once again, so he's just not having a good time in that Ford Capri. And he's not electing to complete his lap time as a result, which is very unfortunate to see.
Yeah, well, that is one of those corners where you even breathe on the accelerator pedal. If you've got any sort of steering lock, the car is going to swap ends on you very, very quickly indeed. So, unfortunately, that got the better of Bang, so hopefully he can do a bit better in the race as we look towards Tyrrell coming through the middle sector on his outlap.
So Tyrrell just going into turn number 9 now, which is the one we were talking about. Craig Jones is coming up just after this, and this is the crest where you have to be. He's taking it very easily in 2nd gear at the moment, just while he's on his outlap, making sure he doesn't cause any damage to this car. Now he goes through the Craig Jones bend, and the Craig Jones bend is a beauty because you can really plant your foot through there as you get full steering lock to the left, trying to get as much grip through there as possible because it's a downhill dip, cresting back up again as you go through the exit of that corner. So you're getting a lot of natural grip as you see again through turn number 12 on the run down into turn 13, which encourages you to go as quickly as possible through here because there's a lot of room for error on the exit, which is very reassuring as you lead into the final stages of this circuit. This is turn 14 now. You start with a slightly tight apex. It opens up before a very brief straight that Tyrrell is pulling onto now. And now you're going through turn 15, the final corner on the circuit, the Galp corner as it's also referred to. And you can't really go full throttle through this with the Ford Capris at the very least. So you have to be careful to touch your apexes on the inside and out and carry as much momentum through as possible. Now,
turn 15 is going to be very, very harsh on those left-hand tyres during the race. The heat is going to get up quite a lot.
Oh, absolutely. You can see there as Tyrrell breaks into turn 1. All 4 wheels get off the ground over that crest, and that cuts into his braking distance. So he has to accommodate for that as he now goes through turn 4, having skipped turn 2, of course, as it's part of the chicane on the non-GT circuit. Taking it nice and easy through turn 5. leaves quite a bit of room to the edge of the track, actually, playing it nice and safe, just looking to get a decent time on the board. On the run down to turn 6, the Toro Vip corner, the corner which encouraged you to brake later every single time. He's up 2 seconds at the moment on Rhodey's time, so he's looking pretty good. He gets his apexes pretty good through that bend. Doesn't go all the way out to the exit now. This corner that he's going through, turn 7, you have to be pretty careful. If you're planting your foot through there in one of these Ford Capris, you have to be all over it with your wrist. That may be a track cut as he's gone quite wide there on the exit of turn 8, although we haven't really tested how it is on these cars. Turn 8, the runoff on the exit of that corner, we're not sure if it's going to be worth a track cut. He is still pressing on, so I'd say his lap time is still good. He has maybe lost a little bit of time there, but the second sector slip should be coming up pretty soon. He's 2.5 seconds up. Great time so far from Tyrrell as he goes down towards what I believe is turn number 12. Plant your foot through here, get it up to third gear, drift all the way to the outside there, jump back on the brakes, down to second gear, maybe first if you're feeling like you need a little bit more punch out of that corner. On the run down to turn 14, the Sagres corner, back into that tight first initial apex that I mentioned earlier on the outlap. Now he's back on that little tiny straight just to compose himself a little bit, get his line right on the run through that final corner. Let's see how much pace he can carry through. You've got to sort of make a late apex there. He's maybe a little bit too late of an apex. He's got a couple of wheels in the grass and lost a bit of time sliding the car backwards through that corner. Well, backwards is a relative figure of speech, of course. Crosses the line, 1 minute 49.486. That's a gap of 9 seconds thanks to Rhodey's error at that part of the track last time around. So Tyrrell is provisionally in first, with Pablo starting his lap now, Stairs.
Yeah, that was a very good lap from Tyrrell, very measured, and I heard him feathering the throttle over some of those crests, and he did a very, very good job. He kept the car quite stable throughout the course of that qualifying lap, and just probably the biggest hiccup was those 2 wheels on the grass on the final corner. That was a bit of a pants-filling moment for him. Could potentially have been disastrous as we turn our attention to Pablo, who's found 3/10 through the first sector, coming now to turn 7 and over that crest. And this is one of those parts of the track that really doesn't resemble what it looks like on the map because of the amount of elevation. It's a lot more hilly than you would expect. Here he is coming out of the Samsung corner up to that terrific left-hand sweeper that we refer to as Craig Jones, mainly because that's what it is called. And this double right-hander is very, very tricky here at turn 10. He does a pretty decent job of it now. Going into the final sector, he has an 0.8 of a second advantage over Tyrrell. So this is turning out to be quite a clean, smooth lap from Pablo. Haven't seen too many big moments from him, if any. And just 2 more corners between himself and the start-finish straight, where we will start to get a bit of a picture of where he sits relative to Tyrrell. Looking like it may be about a second or so quicker based on the numbers that we've seen so far. It's a late apex, very, very clean final corner. Didn't trouble the grass on the inside, so no big hairy moments there. And to come to the line, it is a 1 minute 46.7, 2.8 seconds quicker than Tyrrell.
Great lap time there from Pablo. So hopefully he can stick around the higher ranks of this qualifying session a little bit more as Roadhog now crosses the line to start his flying lap. Now Roadhog, of course, you remember if you were with us last week, of course, built the Hollowham Raceway that he scored a 5th place on, which was one of his best finishes so far this season. He's scored another 5th position at Belle Isle, and he'll be looking to repeat that form as he goes through this race here at the Algarve circuit. Now, he has started this qualifying session a little bit down the order than he normally does, and he's not necessarily a qualifying specialist, is Roadhog, but he's a consistent driver. He knows how to keep his nose out of trouble, and he is currently up 2.5 of a second as he goes through turn 6. So that's a great start so far from Roadhog. He really looks like he likes this track. He's trying to get as much out of that Toyota Celica as he can as a big slide through turn 7. As I mentioned earlier, gets a couple of wheels up through turn 8. And turn 7's an interesting one, as if you do plant your foot through there and the car gets sideways, it's a real wrist snapper as you try and get the wheel back straight, get the front wheels pointing in the right direction, put full opposite lock on to make sure the car stays on track. As he goes through what I believe is now turn 11, the Portimão track. There's an interesting double apex there, but he's up 2 seconds so far. So it's a great lap time from Roadhog. As I stop to breathe now, I'm just trying to say as much as I can as he goes around his circuit. I'm not sure if it's working too well for my lungs. Goes through turn 13 now, on his way up to turn 14, as I mentioned earlier. And I think turn 9 that we missed earlier is slowly becoming one of my favorite parts of this circuit, Stairs.
A great little corner there. Roadhog is pushing harder than we've seen anyone else in this qualifying session push. You can see that Celica wiggling underneath him. He is extracting as much as he possibly can from the little Toyota that could. Looks like it's going to be about 2 seconds quicker than the best time we've seen so far. Roadhog comes to the line 3 seconds quicker. My goodness gracious me. 1:43.4. That is a mighty, mighty time from Roadhog as we turn our attention now to the Ford Capri of Madbird.
Yeah, great time there from Roadhog. 1:43.43 is a very good time, and Madbird is now out and about in one of the other Ford Capris, looking to get as high up the qualifying rankings as he can. This turn 4 now, we saw Sam Smith earlier in the practice session get 2 wheels in the air there because he mounted that curb pretty aggressively. The curbs aren't so much of an issue at this circuit as they have been at some of the others. I did hear a few of the drivers complaining about those yellow sausage curbs on the inside of some of the corners. You have to be careful not to hit those with too much ferocity or you will get up in the air, as Madbird goes almost 2/10 faster through the first sector. Jumps on the brakes now into turn 8 and on the way into turn number 9 here, the Samsung corner, where it's a little bit like the mountain at Cadwell Park with inspiration from, I think it is the toe at Watkins Glen that we raced at earlier in ARW Season 8. So it's a corner we're seeing come up again and again and again, and it gets better every time. He's down just under 2/10 now, so he's lost that time he made up in the first sector to Roadhog. Let's see what he can do in this final sector as he goes through turn number 13 now.
There's 2 corners remaining now for Madbird, and just showing how much Brody was pushing through that mid-sector. That's where Madbird's just lost a few tenths to Roadhog. He was up marginally through the first sector split, loses a bit through this middle sector, so the final sector is going to be the decider between Madbird and Roadhog. It's looked pretty clean, but clean can sometimes be deceptively either fast or slow, so your guess is as good as mine. I'm not going to call it. Madbird, 3/10 slower than Roadhog, slots into second place as Brenton Foley starts his lap.
I think we're starting to see the strengths and weaknesses of the Ford Capri play out as more and more of them complete their laps around here. And now Brenton Foley is going to produce a sensational qualifying lap. He's already started getting sideways through as many corners as he's been handed so far through both of these turns. Make that all 3. He's got the back end out. Let's see what he can do through here. Can he keep the car together? Oh, he does. I don't know how this is going to look on the timesheets, but it looks fantastic on screen.
He always insists to us, Matty, that he's not trying
He's
to...
a second up.
He is a second up. He says he's not trying to be, too oversteery, but it always ends up to be the showstopper in the qualifying session, doesn't it?
I just don't get how he does it. He's one of the slidiest drivers I've ever seen on Apex Rear Wing, yet he still produces some of the best qualifying laps you've ever seen. Can he keep it together over this section? Oh, he gets a little bit wobbly, and that's the bit I was talking about. And that's upset his stability all the way down to the Craig Jones bend, where the turn number 10 there is quite forgiving, though. He's got a bit of a lock-up through 11, though. He's still up a second and a half, mind you. So he's doing okay, but he's starting to slide all over the joint now. And, I mean, that's Brenton Foley in his element, of course. He really likes how these cars handle. Tips it in all the way through turn 13. Doesn't have the rear wheels pointing in the right direction for any portion of that corner. No fault due to the accelerator pedal, just because he jumped on the brakes and got it all the way out, as he does again through turn 14. Through turn 15 now, I hardly imagine he'll be getting sideways through here, as you've got to really keep your foot planted and drive as much.
I don't know.
I guess I'm completely and utterly incorrect. He gets a big slide on the exit of that corner, proves me completely wrong. What sort of lap time is it? It's a 1:41.5. He's up 2 seconds on Roadhog's time. Unbelievable.
Brilliant lap from Brenton Foley, and we expected nothing less from him. And just some of the corners where he managed to hold onto those slides, I didn't think it was possible. Once you get any sort of rotation over those crests, I thought that that's it, but he held onto them. But of course, he struggles to do that consistently throughout the course of a race. And while it might be quick in qualifying, it doesn't always prove to be valuable in the race. We're looking at Decimage now, going through the first sector, 3/10 adrift of what Foley did.
Decimage currently sitting on joint 11th in the points with Tyrrell in the Porsche 935, which is one of the quickest cars we've seen a lot of circuits around here. And he has been very rapid at some of the earlier races, although DNFs and unfortunate happenstances have seen him drop down the order and not being able to score very many points at all. His best finish so far this season was a 4th in Sebring, which is a relatively safe circuit. with not many walls to touch or runoff areas to slide across into.
Let's not
But he
forget,
is
of course, the heartbreaking third place that he missed out on in Belle Isle when he hit the curb and went over the wall and unable to get back. That was 3 minutes before the end of the race. It would have been a podium finish for him.
That's exactly right. It was one of the strangest things and one of the most outrageous things I've ever seen as a commentator. And it was very unfortunate for his points tally, which now sits at 16, a fair way off the 129 points that our series leader currently has. And Diesamage isn't looking too crash hot in this qualifying session with the Porsche 935. That car looks absolutely rapid, though, through the final corner. Let's see what he can do as he powers up the front straight. He's not going to get first, but he is going to get second with a 141.718. A gap of just under 2/10 to Brenton Foley. It's a great lap from Diesamage.
Yeah, it wasn't far away. That Porsche did look like it was understeering through that final corner. He wanted to get the power down, but the front wheels just kept scrubbing across the surface of the tarmac. And I wonder if he just lost a little bit of time through there. He lost a little bit of time in other parts of the track as well. It was actually quite a decent lap there from D-Smash. Now, Goofball Antics, this is an important qualifying lap. Let's hope that's not a track cut for him. He goes off at turn 1. We know sometimes the game will let you get away with that as he goes through that sharp turn 4 and up over the treacherous crest at turn 5. Very, very close to the inside curb there. Playing it easy. Car does not get too out of shape over that crest and down into the hard braking zone at turn 6. This is a lap that's left a lot on the table. 1.3 seconds down.
It's a big gap to the front at the moment. And it looked like he almost cut well across the corner at turn 5 there, but he is still pressing on. So I'd say he doesn't have a track cut at this stage. But that is very uncharacteristic of what Goofball Antics is able to do in that BMW 320. He's looking pretty racy through turn 9 now, keeping the car nice and stable over that crest as he goes into the Craig Jones bend. But that is quite some ways down in the first sector. Of course, you do have a fair chunk of that as straight lines, the straight off turn 1 and the straight off turn 5, but he's lost even more time through the second sector. He's now down 1.8 seconds, and I don't think he's able to exploit the strengths of that BMW 320 as much as he would have liked. But this sector is quite a slow one if you discount that final corner where this BMW 320, I think, is still going to be able to make up a bit of speed. These slow corners is where the car excels, of course, but there's not a huge amount of weight behind it either, so that inertia that you're carrying through this bend here is not as much. It's just a matter of how much power you can get out of that engine into those rear wheels. He gets a little bit wide on the exit. Hasn't registered a track cut or anything yet. It's not going to be up in the upper echelons, I'm afraid. It's going to be a 143.121, which puts him 1.6 seconds. So he has made up a bit of time in the final sector. But as it stands at the moment, he's provisionally only third, as we see Nether take to the start line now in the second of the Porsche 935s. We've seen to start his flying lap stairs.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse for Goofball Antics. Huge lock up there from Nether into turn 1. He had a very, very good lap in practice to put him as high as 4th, I think it was, in the end of that practice session. Just quickly on Nether, he did well actually to claw it back. He was in danger of qualifying behind Roadhog and Madbird, so he found a few tenths in that final sector like you predicted he might. And that may well prove to be the difference, but we know that he's 1 races from further back on the grid. But Nether looks like he's going to put Goofball Antics a further position down in this qualifying session, as he is 3 tenths up on the time set by Brenton Foley through that first sector.
Yeah, he does like this track by the looks of it. His best finish so far this season is a 5th place, which he scored at Barbagallo earlier in the season, a track that's not really suited to the Porsche 935s. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do around this Algarve circuit, whether he can get that 4th position or maybe even a podium. We'll have to wait and see, of course. There'll be a lot of very stiff competition as he goes through turn 11 now, which is just down, is negligibly down by just under a 10th of a second. So he's not looking too bad at the moment. He's very quick at the moment, challenging Brenton Foley's time right now in the Porsche 935 as he gets a little bit towards the inside of that sausage curb there through one of those final turns there. Comes through turn 14 now. Let's see what Nether can do. This is going to be really interesting. This might be one of his best qualifying performances we've seen so far this season, Stairs.
Oh, he's trying to get it turned in off the marbles there. He gets a late apex, though. That might be pretty good for him because it is a long run out of the final corner to the start-finish line, and that will be where the Porsche gains some time on Brenton Foley. Oh, but not enough! 0.02 of a second. He needed another few, dozen meters of track, and he may well have overhauled Brenton Foley, but a terrific lap there from Nether in the end. Second at the moment.
Now it's time for resist in the BMW M1. Of course, we've been ranting, raving absolute praises about this driver as we've seen his pace progress over the course of the season from an 8th place finish in Brno up to his first podium in Watkins Glen and a 2nd place finish last time out at the brand new Hollowham Raceway. And we really want to see how well he can do here at this circuit. The BMW M1 might not be completely suited to the Algarve circuit, being such a heavy and powerful car, but if anyone can get the most out of that car, it's Resist. He's really gotten to grips with it, and he's up 2/3 of a tenth through the first sector, so he's looking pretty good so far.
It's mighty very close, and Resist, well, he was good enough for 3rd in practice, so the pace that we saw from practice indicates that he is going to be in podium contention once again tonight. And he's a man who's gone from strength to strength. It was a long time coming, his first podium, but we get the feeling the floodgates may have opened with his second one coming very, very shortly after his first one. So Resist, it's going to be mighty, mighty tight between Brenton Foley and Nether here. 0.04 of a second. At the moment, Resist is on target for 3rd place, but he could find a little bit of that time in the final sector. It's going to be one of those cases of your guess is as good as mine as to who's going to be in provisional pole at the end of this lap, Matty.
Yeah, the gap's close enough to be negligible between these three at the moment in 3 different cars. So that's very interesting to see how close they can really get these lap times sorted as he cuts it very close to the inside of that bend. Very nice line, gets a couple of wheels on the curb on the exit. That's a flawless line through the final corner. Looks very neat and tidy. I'm going to say this is the fastest lap so far.
Yep.
And it is.
2.5 of a second. Fantastic job there from Resist. Well, we did see how much time Nether found in that final sector, and the BMW M1's not short of a little bit of power itself. So Resist did a great job. Provisional pole, Sam Smith.
Sam Smith gets a little bit of airtime over that crest at turn 1. Just gets on the anchors in time, goes right out to the edges of turn 1 exit there. Through turn 3, of course, bypassing turn 2. This is looking flawless in these first 4 corners, and let's see what he can do. Of course, we saw him in practice getting 2 wheels off the ground there, and he's just a little bit hesitant through that corner during this practice session. But we'll see how he's doing as he charges down towards the first sector split, which he will cross now. And he's up 1.18 of a second, so just under 0.2 of a second. So it's very close at the top. He's a little bit ahead of what the 3 before him were able to do, but I'd say he's going to stretch that gap even further as he almost gets his front wheel off the ground through turn 7 there. Oh, gets 2 wheels off the ground in turn 8. So let's see if he can keep all 4 in the ground through number 9 here, the Samsung bend, I think it's referred to as. Keeps it nice and steady through the crest on the exit of there. Flat chat almost through the Craig Jones bend. Looking very racy indeed. Jumps on the anchors, tries to get the thing settled on the run into turn 11. He's up 1.1 seconds. Great margin from Sam Smith. That run from turn 10 to 11 is crucial in getting the car stable and being able to pick your right line over a blind apex. There's not really many markers out there either. Gets a couple more wheels up in the air through turn 13, I think it is called, and now goes through the penultimate bend. Little bit of a lock up there, but I don't think he's going to lose too much time from it. This is where the Porsche 935 really stretches its legs now. A very fast corner that he's going to try not to understeer through, carrying all that weight through the bend.
Could be a 39.
Now he can get that turbo spooled up. He may very well be into the 39s. He posted a 140 flat during practice. Can he improve on that in his qualifying lap?
Oh, yes!
He can. It's a 139.536. Best his personal best by half a second. Great lap from Sam Smith, and now it's Ziras' turn to shine.
The gauntlet has been thrown down by Sam Smith. 139.5, a full half second of time that he's found from the time that he set in practice. So Sam Smith making a statement in this qualifying session, but now we look towards Ziras, the man on the move in the last 2 races. And we keep talking about Ziras and Goofball Antics, but of course Sam Smith is in that battle. 1/10 of a second is the difference through the first sector, but of course we would expect through sectors 1 and 2 the 320 to have a little bit of an advantage, so he needs to build a bit of a buffer before that run to the line.
Yeah, it's a great margin so far, but he's going to have to bump it up a lot more if he's going to be able to challenge Sam Smith for the first position on the grid. He could very well find himself in the front row, which may be advantageous still, given the nature of this circuit, but we'll have to see what he can do as he approaches the second split. He's down 0.4 of a second.
Wow.
And that's a lot of time he's lost through that section, isn't it, Stez?
It is a lot, and that probably means that he is going to need a minor miracle to finish on provisional or on pole. Now, since he is the last man, there's nothing provisional about it. This is the shootout for pole, and if Ziras beats Sam right now, he will be on pole position, but he's got to make up 0.5 of a second and then some, because he's going to lose a bit of time out of the final corner down this straight. He should be ahead of Resist because he still has about a second in his pocket from Resist. But coming to the line, we haven't really seen enough. He did actually find a bit of time in that final sector. It was only 0.2 in the end. It was still a great lap from Ziras, but Sam Smith is the pole sitter.
We saw from Goofball's lap earlier how much time the BMW 320 is able to make up in the final sector, and Ziras really milked the most out of that car he possibly could, but it was just not enough. So Sam Smith will start from pole position yet again here at the Algarve circuit, with Ziras lining up next to him on the grid in second position. Resist will be third, looking to make up some time there, make up some spots and get himself on the podium and perhaps even challenge for the win this time around. Brenton Foley starts from fourth position, seeing if he can maintain that fourth and post one of his best results of the season so far. Nether will be fifth on the grid. Desamaj starting from sixth, one of his best starts for a little while. Goofball starts uncharacteristically low on the grid from seventh position. Not really feeling this track, not getting to grips with the BMW 320 as much as Ziras was. Roadhog starts from eighth position with Madbird in ninth. Next to him is Pablo in 10th. Tyrrell starts from 11th position on the grid. Rody will be 12th. And Bang will not make it, unfortunately. He has decided to pull out of this race, and I do believe there's someone I have missed. I'm not sure if everyone posted a lap. There was someone at the start of the session, I believe. Let me just check the timing screens. But we should have
Bang who qualified or didn't finish his qualifying lap has now exited the service. So he was the 13th man. Unfortunately, we are down to 12 with Bang now absent.
That's exactly right. So it is a 12-car race, and now the cars are peeling out of pit lane once again for a 10-minute warm-up session where they can go around, practice a few last-minute setup ideas, and practice their starts, the all-important race starts. We do employ a standing start procedure here at ARW for the DRMs. It's not a procedure they would have used in the real-life instance of these cars. Normally, a rolling start will be preferred for these machines, but the standing start has been the chosen option for this season, and it's proven to be a little bit painful at some of these races, hasn't it, Stairs?
Yeah, nerves will be high with the championship contenders thinking about that. They don't want a bad start. We've seen a couple of disasters early on in the season, but as we get closer to the end of this end of this championship, it will certainly figure highly in the minds of those who have got the most to lose. And Sam Smith starts from pole position. It's his fourth pole position of the championship. He's managed to convert two of those. The last one was last week in Hollowham, where he finished in fourth place. Just too many mistakes, I think he would have been the first to admit. He'll be wanting to rid himself of those mistakes tonight, try and build a gap. But whether or not he has enough of an advantage in pace in that car to overhaul the disadvantage that it has in the pits remains to be seen. So Ziras versus Sam, that's going to be very, very interesting. The other interesting factor tonight will be Goofball Antics. How many spots can he climb? He desperately needs to keep his podium run continuing to remain in the championship fight. Well, say remain in the championship fight. He still has a 19-point advantage, so even if he finishes fourth or fifth, he'll still have a decent championship lead, but it will be much diminished. So he wants to protect that advantage as much as he possibly can.
Yeah, he looked pretty uneasy through qualifying, and of course that lap time we saw was not a particularly quick one from Goofball Antics. But as long as he keeps things on the straight and narrow throughout this race, doesn't lose the back end through any of these corners, which will be pretty difficult to do in the BMW 320. He'll be able to make up a few spots that way, collecting on the returns from mistakes that we probably are going to see from a few of the cars in the field. It goes without saying, really. I don't want to wish unfortunate circumstances on anybody, but mistakes, errors are definitely a part of the game, and this track is definitely one that can throw up a few of those unexpected turbulence issues, especially through some of those crests that we see through some parts of the track. They're just gritting up now for their first practice start. So if you're just joining us, don't stress. You're not joining in just for the start of the race, and there's a reason why we're not super excited at the moment, and that's because they're just lining up for their first practice start. The race proper will be getting underway in just under 8 minutes time, but for now, let's see how these guys do on their practice laps.
Given that this is a very high-profile international racing circuit, the grid spots do have a fair bit of space around them, and so that plays into the hands of everyone who's hoping for a clean start, because there is a bit more margin for error. We've started races on some very, very cramped grids, including one that was 3 wide back in Belle Isle. So this one is hopefully going to prove to be as clean as that practice start just was, although a little bit of biffo there between Brenton Foley and Desamage coming through turn 3.
Interesting to note that the pole position on this circuit is on the outside of the track. But although the grids are staggered by quite some margin, there's a full car length and then some stagger between first and second, and vice versa throughout the rest of the rows of this grid. It is indeed pole position who starts on the outside. It is the clean part of the track, of course, being the racing line. So you do have a bit of work to do from second position if you want to get up the inside. Not just having the line there isn't going to get you all the way there. You've got to overcome the dirt on the inside of the track. You've got to overcome the stagger to the front. But if the person in first gets a bad start, it's very easy to get up the inside of them and pull away at the start of the race stairs.
Yeah, it's a very, very crucial point, the one you mentioned about the outside being the clean line or the preferred racing line. Does give the opportunity for the man starting on pole to have the better start. Of course, it still is dependent on how they drop the clutch, but there is more grip in theory on that part of the circuit. So it is going to be quite a quick turn 1, so they will carry a lot of speed from the outside. And the inside, like it's not like La Source in Spa, for example, where the inside is very much the preferred line there, because you can sort of affect a bit of a block pass if you're far enough alongside. With a quick corner like we have turn 1 here in Portimão, it is very much not the case, because the switchback, as it's called, is very much an opportunity for the car on the outside to use if the car on the inside is taking a very, very tight entry to the corner.
I very briefly just saw cars going 3 wide for the final turn. I think it was Desamage, Brody and Tyrrell getting all the way to the outside, taking up as much room as possible with those 3 cars side by side. They thought better of it and got themselves into a more orderly fashion through the rest of that corner. Not something you want to be doing too much of course, because it's a very hairy situation to have yourself in. But yeah, turn 1 is going to be quite interesting. Don't know how it's going to fare on the start of the race, because the cars aren't going to be carrying as much speed off the grid, of course. But that drop-off on the braking zone might make a few of these cars come unstuck as they try and jump on the anchors and keep their cars pointing in the right direction. So that's something to keep an eye out for at the start of the race. Hopefully there's not too much, as we've seen something very drastic happen in the back there. I think Tyrrell got upside down. I'll have to check the replay.
Yeah, it didn't look good. There was quite a few cars involved in that little incident there. So that's an example of what we don't want to see on the start. It was a very, very good start from Brenton Foley. He got that Ford Capri launched very, very well in between the 2 cars that started on the front row in that practice start. So that's the sort of thing that he'll be hoping for come the races. Sam Smith takes the shortcut on the inside there of turn 6. 4 minutes left until race start. We're going to have a cheeky break, and on the other side we'll talk about our predictions for the race ahead. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to round 8 of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship from Algarve in Portimão, Portugal. It is not a very long time before race start, 1 minute 30, so we're getting a little bit excited, getting those little butterflies in our stomach, as this is a very crucial round of the championship, as they all are, of course. There are no drop rounds in Apex Rear Wing, so every single race counts towards the championship. 55 minutes plus 1 lap, that is what we do here in Season 8 of the Apex Rear Wing Championship, and these races have proven to be strategical masterclasses for a lot of the races, with the BMW 320s able to employ sometimes a no-stop strategy or a very short pit stop, with the very powerful Porsche 935 turbos having to spend a much longer time refueling, and that's created quite a nice balance of power.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really creating some very interesting parallels that can be drawn between the cars, which are almost on opposite ends of the weight and power spectrum here. So it's really makes it quite hard to predict which car's going to do well, because yeah, you've got 1 lap speed, which is very important for qualifying and for being able to put fast laps in, of course, but the different characteristics of the cars means they behave differently in pit lane and at the pit stop, of course, don't they, Stairs? The heavier cars, of course, will be using a bit more tyres, as they carry a lot more understeer and a lot more inertia through the corners, and the more powerful ones, which are normally one and the same, will be drinking a lot of fuel as well, so they're going to be spending a lot of time in the pit lane. It is important to note before we start the race that the pit stops work in that you can only take 2 sets of tyres at once. And I'm not sure if you can take them at the same time as you're taking a load of petrol. So you can either change the fronts or you can change the rears, and they take a long time to change. So for some of the cars that spend a short amount of time in the pits, it may be beneficial only to change 1 set of tyres to keep them fresh and get them back out on the track, not having to spend too much time in the pits. The Porsche 935s and the BMW M1 will have to spend a little bit more time in the pit lane, and they can afford to change those tyres. But, of course, they'll be losing all that track time regardless. We're just sitting in the start of the race session now, 55 minutes plus 1 lap to go. They're starting to grid up. Stairs, who's your prediction for the victory today?
Oh, I think Ziras is on a roll. I asked him the question after he got his maiden win of the series back in Montreal 2 weeks ago, whether he felt like that might open the floodgates, and he said he hoped so. Well, he had a fantastic race last time out, starting from the back of the grid. This time he's in 2nd place, and I just think that he'll have that confidence back. He'll know that he can win. He'll know from practice that he's up there with the fastest guys in this championship in these cars, and he's got the advantage of the shorter pit stop, so it's very hard to go past him.
Yeah, I can't really go past Ziras either. He's my pick for the victory. Sam Smith's got the pace in that Porsche 935, of course, but last time out showed that he's not a flawless driver, unfortunately. He does make a couple of errors here and there, and of course that 935 spends a lot of time in the pit lane, so that BMW 320 can benefit immensely from the pit stop. And I think it's important to note on that Goofball Antics is going to be an unsuspectedly good performer. I think he's going to find himself either hovering around or sitting on the podium by the time this race is finished. He'll be getting to grips with that car, and he'll be slowly but surely picking his way through the field, making his way up to what I believe will be a 3rd position for Goofball. So I think Ziras will take it out, Sam Smith possibly 2nd on the podium, and Goofball to round out the podium. But let's have a look at the starting grid. Sam Smith does start on pole position next to Ziras, as we mentioned earlier. 2 of the main championship protagonists here battling it out from the lead of this race. Resist, after a great qualifying session, will start from 3rd on the grid ahead of Brenton Foley in 4th, who had a sensational lap which looked spectacular and looked even better on the timing sheets. Nether starts from 5th position, which is probably one of his best qualifying results so far this season. Great to see from Nether. Desamaj in another one on the Porsche 935 starts from 6th on the grid ahead of Goofball Antics, as I mentioned earlier, will hopefully be able to make up a lot of spots from that spot on the grid. Roadhog in the Toyota Celica will start from 8th on the grid ahead of Madbird in 9th in the Ford Capri. Pablo in 10th. Tyrrell for Jeff Vader Racing in the green Capri in 11th ahead of Brody in 12th position. Rounding out the grid, of course, Bang has elected to sit out the rest of this race tonight. And we are unfortunately missing the presence of Berto and Greg Taro tonight. So it is a 12-car race, but it's going to be a good one.
It absolutely is, and a shout out to Greg Turry if you are watching the broadcast. Had to work tonight apparently, so well, hopefully we can keep you company while you get some work done. We hope to see you in the remaining rounds of this DRM championship. So Sam Smith, with his Shadow Ziras in tow, rounds the final corner on this formation lap, and he's coasting along. Doesn't want to use too much fuel because he'll have to fill up, and every moment, every litre, every milliliter saved here is a milliliter he won't have to put in his pit stop.
That's exactly right. A few of these guys have been having issues with their fuel calculations that we've seen in the past few races, putting a little bit too much fuel in so that slows their car down and increases the time they spend in the pits, or a little bit not enough fuel. A little bit not enough, it's probably a better word for that. Just slightly under the fuel required to complete the race, which means they have to go into full-blown conservation mode just to get across the line and salvage some points at the end of the race. Just to quickly touch on the point system, we use the same system as MotoGP, so 25 points for a race win, paying all the way down to 15th. So theoretically, if all 12 of these drivers on the grid finish the race tonight, they'll all take home some points, which will be great for some of them, as we have almost everyone. Greg Taro is the only one in the series so far yet to register points, but he's not with us. We've got all the cars gridded up and the lights are on, Stairs.
The lights are on. We're about to go racing here for round 8, Portimão, and it's a pretty even start, I think.
Great start from Brenton Foley.
Pablo didn't get away particularly well, but here we go. Brenton Foley, as you say, having a look down the inside of Resist, but Sam Smith has got the whole shot through into turn number 1. There's a big contact in, but Decimage and Rhodey in the background spinning around. Oh no, let's have a replay, see what happened there. They both got a bit of a wiggle off the line, but it was coming into turn 1 where there was contact, and Goofball Antics very, very nearly involved with that. Got a bit of a hip and shoulder from them, and thankfully has managed to avoid any serious contact. It means he's up a spot into 6th place, and Brenton Foley has now lost that spot to Resist. Sorry, he didn't actually make that spot up on Resist. He was just having a look. So the top 5 are as they started.
So it's still pretty even Stevens at the moment, and all the cars have filed their way into single file and are starting to just put as much pace in as they possibly can.
Look at the leaders, though.
Yeah, they're very close at the front. First and second, Sam Smith and Ziras, who's having a lunge. Not going to get anything done there. He doesn't want to take too many risks too early in the race. Still needs to get to grips with how this car behaves. But he's all over the back of Sam Smith, completely swarming him. And that just shows how much quicker this BMW 320 can be over Sam Smith's Porsche 935 at the moment. That may change as the race goes on.
Yeah, he wants to get the job done here because he knows that Porsche is going to start pulling away as they go through the final corner and onto that straight where it'll get to stretch his legs. Sam Smith really needs to start to build a gap and try and get that advantage that he needs for the pit stop, but he has managed to stay ahead as they come through to complete the first lap of the race, with Resistant Brenton Foley having a fantastic old scrap behind. And look at Sam Smith pull away down the straight from that BMW 320 driven by Ziras.
That's unbelievable. I've never seen such a gap being pulled so quickly between these cars, and this track with that camera angle really shows how much power Sam Smith's Porsche 935, as do all the Porsche 935s, have underneath that rear wing.
Resist has gone wide, and Brenton Foley goes through up into 3rd place.
Yeah, so Resist has lost a little bit of time there as he runs wide on the exit of turn 4. Not the worst place he can run wide, but he has lost a position. He'll be looking to claw that back as soon as he can. But at the same time, Brenton Foley will be looking to stretch his legs if he can, making the most of his now inherited 3rd place on the grid. Not a huge amount of movement behind them at the moment. Decimage being the main mover in Shake, having fallen all the way back to 4th position as it stands at the moment. So everyone's sitting pretty solid where they are at the moment. Sam Smith's already got a gap of 1.5 seconds on Ziras, and that main straight is just disastrous for the BMW 320's abilities to keep on the back of Sam Smith. So this may be Sam's race, despite our predictions.
Early to make these bold calls, but throughout 2/3 of this lap, Ziras has only clawed back about 0.3 of a second of the advantage that Sam Smith gained on that straight. So if Sam then gets to the straight, big moment. So
yeah, he nearly spun it there.
So that's desperately bad news for Sam Smith, because he was looking like he would be able to put another second on Ziras as they came across to complete the second lap of the race. He's going to do it again, but not quite as much of a gap that as what he thought he might have had. It could have been up to 2 seconds, and because he had that moment coming into the final corner, it hurt his overall top speed down that straight, and he's only got 0.6 of a second. So Ziras looks like he will be able to claw that back to pretty much naught by the end of this lap.
Yeah, Decent Mage is already making a few moves. He's made up 2 spots since he spun out earlier and is sitting in 8th position and desperately trying to get past Madbird. Had a look at the exit of, in the entry into turn 1. Tried to make a pass happen, but couldn't get it done. But Decent Mage is on the charge, and this might be a track where he's really able to shine once he can recover from that spin that we saw earlier. It is still Sam Smith ahead at the moment. The gap is back down to 7/10, so Ziras is able to claw that back as this lap progresses.
Decent Mage has now managed to outdrag Madbird out of the hairpin down at turn 6 and into 7, and he moves himself up into 7th place. So great job there, as Goofball Antics looks like he's had a little bit of a moment.
Brenton Foley's had a big slide. He's kept it together. He's kept it pointing in the right direction. Hasn't lost a spot yet, but those tyres are going to be feeling like 50-cent pieces. I tell you what, he slammed on those brakes and had a big lock-up, and Resist is now all over the back of him as a result.
Already 7 seconds adrift of the leading battle now. Brenton Foley in 3rd place. Sam Smith and Ziras proving to be in a class of their own, and can't say I'm surprised, quite honestly, as we come across to complete the 3rd lap now, and Sam Smith goes into the 3rd lap with an 0.8 of a second advantage. It's already up to 1 second as it stretches away down the straight, and Sam Smith sets the fastest lap of the race, 1:39.4. He put 0.5 of a second on Ziras through that lap.
That's Sam Smith's personal best lap time so far, but he runs very wide on the exit of turn 5, and Ziras is all over the back of him once again. The gap is down to 2/10. It's negligible. Ziras is having a look up the inside on the run of turn 6. Jumps on the anchors. He's going to have the advantage in that lighter car, being able to pull that car up, and he gets it done. Ziras is now ahead on the exit of turn 6 as a result of that moment for Sam Smith.
There's also a battle going on for 5th and 6th between Goofball Antics and Brenton Foley, but we're focusing on this battle for the lead because Ziras has managed to get ahead of Sam Smith, and it's just too many little mistakes from Sam Smith. He's pushing just that little bit too hard to try and build a gap, and he may be better off just driving at 9/10 and not risking these mistakes so much, but maybe he needs to. It's the way he drives. Unfortunately for him, it means that Ziras has got clear, and 7/10 of a second, the tables have very much been turned as Sam Smith goes very, very deep there into the hairpin. He wants to be within about a second of Ziras to try and repass him as they go down the straight. So penultimate corner for Ziras and Sam Smith. The gap's sitting at about 7/10 of a second. Sam wants a very, very clean exit out of here. He's going to get that. He's going to be within range, I should say, as they come across the line. It's down to 5/10 of a second already. You're going to see the horses in the back of that Porsche 935 push him past that BMW 320, but not enough. He ran out of straight. And once you get into that downhill braking zone, the Porsche has no stopping ability, but Ziras went wide at turn 1, just a little bit too deep, and Sam was able to get up underneath him. This is a very tricky part of the track. They're both tiptoeing around the curve, and Ziras is a bit more confident through there than Sam Smith, and he has the inside down into turn number 6, and he gets back through 2 changes for the lead in 3 corners.
Great racing, and it's only lap 5. They're still side by side, but Sam Smith is now back ahead as they go into turn number 8 on the run into turn number 9, that very steep uphill right-hander that we've been talking about so much in this qualifying and practice session so far. Oh, big moment from Sam Smith. He loses it over the crest. I knew it was going to happen to somebody at some point, and it's hit Sam Smith dearly. He's now already just over a second behind Ziras as a result of that mistake. He will make that time up over the straights. He can't get the braking done if he's too far back, though, because that 320 is just so much better on the brakes, but that's a big mistake from Sam Smith. He's lucky to have that car still on the road, still running. Lucky he didn't touch the fence there, trying to keep it steady through the grass or anything like that. But that's going to shake him quite a bit, I'd say. So Sam Smith is going to have to make sure he doesn't do that again. Make sure he modulates the throttle, but he's looking very wobbly through the second half of this course now.
Yeah, he's pushing hard for that victory, But I wonder at what point he may start to think that it's a lost cause. If Ziras is able to maintain this pace, Sam Smith is making too many errors to keep this pace. But he's back in it. Down the straight, he's going to sweep by that BMW 320 down into turn 1, and Ziras is going to take a very wide line. That was a mistake. Bit of a lock-up from the front tyres of Ziras, and he drops a lot of time through there.
Sam Smith got a perfect brake marker for turn 1 as well and nailed his line through there, so he could not have gone any faster through that bend if he tried. Did very well. I honestly thought he was going to run it in hot and shoot right off into the runoff, but he did very well to keep it on the track and get his apexes right as well. So Sam Smith has immediately made up that deficit, and he's already up a second and a half, 2 seconds now over Ziras as they go through turn 6 towards turn 7 in this tight, twisty section here. So great couple of corners there from Sam Smith. Let's hope he can maintain this pace and not make too many more errors this race.
Yeah, out to 2 seconds. That's the biggest margin that any of the leaders have had so far. So, although having said that, it's down to a second and a half. It ebbs and flows so much. It's like those old races between the turbocharged Sierras and the turbocharged Sierras, and trying to remember what it was that they were fighting at Bathurst. It was very much one had the advantage at the top of the hill and the other one had the advantage down the straights, and you saw the advantages ebb and flow back in from one person's advantage to the other person's advantage, and created very, very interesting, intriguing races.
Well, the battle between Brenton Foley and Goofball for 5th place was starting to heat up there. I was watching it before on some of the cameras, but Goofball Antics had a big moment through one of those corners, almost spun it out, had to take to the infield of the track, and is now just under 6 seconds behind Brenton Foley. So 139.1 for Sam Smith. He's on a flyer. Wow. He's absolutely rapid now. He's really gotten to grips with that Porsche 935, and he's milking every single last horsepower out of it as he goes around this circuit. But as I was saying earlier, Goofball Antics has made a big error there, and he's down 8 seconds now on Brenton Foley, who's able to stretch his legs down this straight. So that battle is done and dusted for now. Keep your eyes on it. They could hot up again in the future, especially if Porsche 935 with Decimage in 7th position is able to catch him. But for the time being, the closest battle we have on track is probably what we have for the lead, I would say, between Sam Smith and Ziras. Although the gap there is still 4.3 seconds, so there may be some closer battles around the track.
Yeah, Resist and Nether is probably the next closest, around about 2 seconds separating those two. Brenton Foley, of course, having a moment earlier on. We didn't see on camera, he was running as high as 3rd at one stage. Resist, once again, proving that he is a podium contender, but the guys ahead seem to have cleared off a little bit, and Nether having one of his best runs of the season, running in 4th place and 3 seconds ahead of Brenton Foley. So Goofball Antics is now falling actually back into the clutches of Decimage and Madbird, which is very, very bad news for him. And doubly bad news for him is that in first and
Brenton Foley's had a big spin.
Well, that could be a position there for Goofball Antics. He's going to go through around about now and into 5th place as Brenton Foley recovers to the racetrack. Let's catch a replay of that. We know that he likes to drive on the edge, and yeah, the car just got a bit of a tank slapper and it spat him out. Luckily, there's a lot of tarmac runoff, no walls to speak of, so he will continue, but he's lost a few spots and a little bit of pride.
While we were watching that replay, Sam Smith posted a 1 minute 38.720. Wrap your eyeballs around that, Stairs. That's a phenomenal lap, and it looks like he's just going to be chipping away at that lap time as he goes throughout this race. The margin at the front is already up to 4 seconds now. Ziras is able to keep some very good pace in that BMW 320, but the speed on the Porsche 935, the number 20 Blechschuppen-Rennen car, is out of this world.
Still, 3 seconds is not going to be enough for the pit stop that he needs. So if he is able to continue pulling away at that sort of rate, then it may well be big enough to make up for the deficit in the pits, as we keep talking about. But it is very much a factor in this race. So Sam Smith leads at the moment. Ziras 3.5 seconds adrift. Resist is now 12 seconds behind his brother. The two Sizer brothers occupying 2nd and 3rd place. Nether has a very, very comfortable margin ahead of Goofball Antics, 10 seconds. But Goofball Antics is another one of those 320s who may well be able to find some positions through the pits, and he very much needs to. 4th place, I think, at the moment, he'd quite happily take that, I think. But he ideally would want a few more points than that to keep that podium run alive.
Yeah, absolutely. He's on a pretty hot thing at the moment. He's just got to keep that pace going as Decimage has a big spin in 6th position, drops down to... I'm not sure where he is now. He's had a bit of a glitch, so I'll have to track him down.
I wonder if that was a technical issue then. Let's catch the replay now of Decimage. And he was up in 6th place over the crest. It was on, actually it was kind of already had come over the crest and it was on application of the throttle. So that was an immediate retirement for Decimage. He went back to the garage on my screen and then he's rejoined the racetrack and he is now circulating in 9th place there. So apologies, Decimage fans. He is still circulating.
Oh, a good battle here between Brenton Foley and Madbird for 6th position here. He had a little bit of a look into turn 1, couldn't get anything done, but those two Ford Capris are going hammer and tongs at it right now, and that battle is going to be a great one to watch. So keep your eyes on here. They're neck and neck at the moment. This can go anywhere. We've seen Brenton Foley can be absolutely rapid in his car, but he's not super consistent when it comes to race pace. So this could be a battle that lasts for quite some time.
And he's going down the inside at turn 6. Very, very decisive move if he can get it stopped. But Madbird drives around the outside, and it's a drag race to the 7th corner, the big sweeper. And that is very much a hold your breath and hope sort of situation as you come over the crest. Bit deep there for Foley, and Madbird's going to sneak up underneath him out of one of your favourite corners. Another switchback, though, through the elevation, and Foley gets back ahead by some car lengths now. Drops Madbird down to 7th place, and what a great little tussle that was.
Yeah, in the heat of the battle there, I think Madbird wanted to be extra careful over the top of that turn 9 apex, so just lost a little bit of time making sure his car stayed on track. Sam Smith has just posted a 1 minute 38.526. He's taking chunks out of his laps every time he crosses the start-finish line.
Yeah, that's bad news for Ziras. That is a huge lap. 38.5. That's a full second faster than the time he used to set pole position.
If he can maintain this pace and this record-breaking pace almost it is for the rest of the race, he's currently 8 seconds or so up on Ziras. If he can maintain the pace that he's got on that BMW 320, this pit stop difference may become negligible by the time the stops come around. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out at this stage. It's going to be very close at the very least. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled on that one because that could go any way at the moment. And it's just incredible to see the amount of tenths that Sam Smith is able to squeeze out of that Porsche 935.
This is very much the battle for the championship. He leads Ziras by 4 points, or a bit deep there though. And with Goofball Antics down in 5th place, this is a very, very good opportunity for both Sam Smith and Ziras to eat into the championship lead that Goofball Antics has over them. So 19 points is the deficit between Sam Smith and Goofball Antics as it stands. But you do get 25 points for a victory, so Sam Smith would eat into that advantage if it were to finish where they are now. So Goofball Antics, who's currently sat down in 5th place, would only take 11 points, so that would be a significant cut into that deficit.
Yeah, Sam Smith is... he mentioned earlier when Birdo was taking that race off, these last couple of races, actually, he goes quite wide through turn 1, actually. He loses a little bit of time there. He was saying that he was relying on Birdo's setups in the early stages of this race to get that car dialed in and get it going quick, and he was able to produce some pretty good results in the first half of this season. So he wasn't sure how he was going to handle the car now that Birdo's on holidays, not able to help him out with his setups. But he looks to have got a very good grip on it at the moment. He's 10 seconds ahead of Ziras as it stands at the moment. So gaining about 2 seconds a lap on that BMW 320. And it looks like he doesn't need Birdo's help too much these days at the moment. So Birdo's having a nice relaxing holiday wherever he is at the moment. And Sam Smith is flying the flag for Blek Schuppenrennen at the moment. Great to see.
Shout out to Birdo if he is watching. Hope you're having a great holiday. But it is something very interesting is that Birdo's first race with Apex Rear Wing was the 6 hours of Spa-Francorchamps way back in May last year, where he teamed up with Sam Smith and they ended up winning that race. And that was a very, very interesting race for them because they struggled with technical issues early on in the race and then just got faster and faster and faster throughout the course of the day and set some unbelievable lap times towards the back end of that race. And that's the kind of thing that I'm reminded of with Sam Smith in this race, where he started off with a few errors. He's slowly finding his feet in this Porsche 935 Turbo in the this around this racetrack. So that's certainly a bit of a bad omen for Ziras, as once again the gap is eked out by another second or so on that lap.
He's just starting to tone it down a little bit now. His last lap was a 1 minute 39.2, a fair way off his best time of 1 minute 38.5. So he's just keeping it nice and relaxed at the moment, maintaining the gap that he has over Ziras, which is all important. He doesn't want to push himself too hard, or he could very well make another error. So I think he's acknowledged that. He's going to tone it back and just relax a little bit, conserve his tyres, conserve his fuel, make his pit stop just that little bit quicker, and just maintain the gap. Stay in control of this race, control the pace, and see what Ziras is able to do in response. Not a huge amount at the moment. The gap is still staying the same. In fact, it's increasing a little bit. It's up to about 11 seconds at the moment. So that could just be dependent on where the two cars are on track at any one moment. But Ziras, it's his race to win at the moment. He's got to really put his foot down and milk every last tenth out of this BMW 320 he possibly can. Gets a little bit sideways going through turn 9. Keeps it together though. He's a very skilled driver. He's been with ARW for quite some time. Dominated the last series, of course, and he's got a very, very glamorous history of race wins in this series, in this ARW clan. Doesn't he, Stairs?
He does. I've spent a lot of time trying to beat him and failing most of the time, but he's just effortlessly fast, it seems. He turns up after you've been practicing for a week trying to nail down a circuit, and you think, oh, I might have a chance this week, and then within half an hour, without even having practiced the track, he's managed to match your time. And you know that that's not just a flash in the pan. He can consistently put out those lap times, and that's what makes him so very difficult to beat.
Just a little bit further back on track now. Madbird, currently sitting in 6th position, isn't too far ahead of Brenton Foley. The gap is just under a second now, so that battle is going to be resuming at some point in the near future, in the next couple of laps, I would say. So keep your eyes on that one. Yeah, those two are always great fun to watch. They've been adversaries, you could say, for quite some time in ARW. I remember they're having some very close duels throughout the last season, unless I'm thinking of Madbird and Decimage, of course.
It was definitely Madbird and Decimage who were the closest to each other in points last season, with that ending with a tie in points and the count back. Foley was on the podium more often than not in the Caterhams. It's fair to say that he hasn't gelled with these cars as much as he did with the Caterhams, but he's been no less entertaining. It's fair to say that. Just
want to draw your attention back to Sam Smith. The gap's been sacrificed a little bit, because I've seen Sam run off the track at a couple of corners this lap. Had a big wide berth through turn 5 and then through one of the other corners. I think it was turn number 7. I'm not too sure, but he's lost a little bit of time there. Big two-wheel moment from Sam Smith on the exit of turn number 13 there. Touched the curb a little bit too much, got a little bit close to the inside, and he's lost quite some time. The gap's now 6 seconds to Ziras. So Ziras will be, it'll be music to his ears if Sam Smith keeps making errors like this. Of course, he is going to make that time right back up on the main straight here as he plants his foot and unleashes all 849 of those horsepowers under the rear wing of that Porsche 935. The gap's up to 10 seconds again, but it is a 1 minute 40.9. So 2.5 seconds down from his best lap as a result of those errors, and he's really making the most of the track limits at turn 1. He looks to be habitually running off the track at turn 1 now.
He's letting him get away with it.
Apparently. Yeah, they're letting him get. Yeah, if he's getting away with it, and he says, why not, I suppose. He goes through turn 5 now, where he had a bit of an off earlier. The runoffs here aren't super forgiving. They're not completely flat and even, so you will lose a bit of pace trying to keep your car controlled as you get on the runoff and try and get back onto the track. A little bit of a puff of smoke into turn 6. Blocks the brakes a little bit. Gets a little bit tail happy on the exit, so he's not losing too much time, but he's not gaining too much time either.
Didn't get to see exactly how much time Ziras gained on that lap, because Ziras got a track cut in the final sector of that previous lap, so he's pushing hard as well, but he did lose just 0.7 of a second in the first sector alone. We know that he lost more than that in the final sector as well to Ziras, so that gap, as you said, grew a little bit as he came down the straight, but it's a lot smaller than it was this time last lap.
The gap between car number 17 of Madbird and car number 074 of Brenton Foley seems to be back on now. The gap is half a second, but if you look at the two on track, it's pretty much negligible. They're scrapping once again, but Brenton Foley's not going to have a look into turn 6, mind you. Turn 6 is a great passing opportunity. There's a really lovely bit of camber on that corner, so he can put a lot more pace through than you'd think so. It really encourages you, as I was saying earlier, to brake later and later every time you go through. It's a very forgiving corner, as some of these are, where some of them are not very forgiving at all. The gap is 2 seconds, so he's pretty much all over the rear bumper of Madbird now, is Brenton Foley. Quite wobbly on the exit of turn 9.
Less than 2 seconds now.
Oh, it's 2/10 rather is what I was looking for there. I did use the wrong measurement of time there. It is definitely not 2 seconds. It is 2/10 of a second. So Madbird is still ahead. Brenton Foley hasn't made an effort to have a look yet. Very different lines on the exit of turn 11, mind you. So this could be conducive to some action into turn 13.
It's a good thing about this circuit. These different cambered corners allow you to take sometimes different lines through the corners, which gives you lots of side-by-side racing, as Foley has a little bit of a look up the inside there as they go into turn number 14 and to the final corner. Madbird's a little bit wide, and Foley getting a couple of wheels on the curb. He's going to drag race down the start-finish straight and slots in behind. I reckon it might be a little bit of a do-or-die move into turn 1. No, he thinks better of it.
He can't do it. He had the toe, but not as much toe as he would have liked. He was only gaining a little bit of time on the back of Madbird there, heading down towards turn 1. So he had a look on the entry to turn 1, as we saw, but he did think better of it. He probably thought there's better places I can get this pass done. But he's glued to the back of him now. He's almost pushing him around the track. And I'd say he's going to have a look into turn 6 because he's all over the back of him now.
Yep.
Look at that. He's ducked into the inside. He's going to jump on the brakes. It's a battle of the late breakers here. No, Madbird is very good on the brakes. He's able to maintain his line. Doesn't have to drive too defensively on the outside there. And is able to keep his line through the corner. So Madbird is being fantastic in terms of braking markers this time around. You know, he's doing very good this race to keep Brenton Foley at bay through.
Change for the lead. Sam Smith has dropped to second place. He's 4 seconds adrift. Let's see if we can catch the moment, because he's had a spin. He's gone to the inside. Where is that? Looks like it's coming over one of the crests, turn 12. Big moment in this motor race, and Sam Smith has paid heavily because of it.
That's very crucial in how this race is going to play out. Ziras just has to stay steady where he is at the moment. The gap is 5 seconds now. So it probably won't be too long if Sam Smith can keep his car on the track before he's able to make that gap back up again. And we're going to see a nice little battle between those two shaping up once again. But that's a big mistake from Sam Smith, as we've seen again. And he's really got to, if he at least can't prevent these mistakes, he's got to control them. He's got to know when to push and when to take it easy. We've got a big lock up there from, I think it was
Pablo.
It was Pablo indeed, who was shooting off as lap traffic there, getting out of the way of this battle. And look, Sam Smith is already just under the back of Ziras here. So he really can push that Porsche to its absolute limits and put an incredible amount of pace onto the track and really slash into a margin.
Ziras had a spin himself, actually, in the corner that you saw that smoke from the lockup. It wasn't just because of Pablo going off the racetrack. It was Ziras having a spin as well. Thankfully, it was actually a very, very sharp right-hand bend. So the spin almost put him in the right spot. So he just had to pluck a gear and
we've got a technical issue. Resistance retired from the race.
Oh, no.
I think that's just happened. His power's gone out.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, he's just posted in the Discord chat that his power's gone out. He's fallen off the track, completely vanished, and that is very unfortunate for Resist. He was on track to have a fantastic result there, and it's all completely gone through no fault of his own.
That promotes Nether up into the final spot on the podium, and that is very, very bad luck there for Resist. He was looking very, very good for another podium. Would have made it 3 in 4 races, if I'm not mistaken. So what disaster for Resist, DNFing that race, and that's going to cost him in his points battle, where he is currently in 6th place. He's going to lose out to Brenton Foley, who's only 3 points behind him, as we focus now on this battle for the lead. Sam Smith catching up to Ziras after both of them had moments on the same lap. Ziras losing a lot less time than Sam Smith, and as such, he has the lead of the race by 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, so it is still very close to the front there. Sam Smith hasn't been able to find a way to get past just yet, and we do still have a very good battle for what is now 4th position as a result of Resist dropping out between those two Ford Capris.
Oh, what happened to Nether? Did he pit?
Oh, he may have pit indeed. Yes, he has pitted. Nether is in the pits now, and I think he's one of the first drivers to take his stop. We did see Rody rolling through just before, taking a drive-through penalty, And yes, Nether is taking the first pit stop of the race in the Porsche 935.
I don't know where to look as Brenton Foley has another fake down into turn 6 with Madbird still in 4th place. That was 5th place, of course, but Nether making his pit stop. A long pit stop, it has to be said. He's a minute and a half adrift. Didn't see him make an error. Sam Smith is now pulling out of the slipstream. Well, not much slipstream involved, but a lot of power in that Porsche 935 Turbo, and he retakes the lead from Ziras, but Ziras is going to switch underneath him through turn 3 and regain the lead before they get down to turn 4. So that's big moment on the curb there as Sam Smith tries his best not to put it on his roof, loses a lot of time as a result of that, and he's just probably thinking here how much work has been undone with those little mistakes, and one big one. He had probably cumulatively gained about 10 seconds here and there, and it's unfortunately come to naught from his point of view.
He's got to get a bit more practice in those braking maneuvers into turn 1 because he ran in a little bit too hot into that first corner and just had to take a very early apex and shoot across, go onto the runoff on the outside, and because he went onto the runoff, he wouldn't be wanting to maintain that position at the front. In any real-life racing situation, he'd be told to redress that position, which he has done. So he is currently sitting in 2nd position. It doesn't look like he's got any shortage of opportunities in which he can get past Ziras. It's just a matter of if he can maintain that spot at the front, because at the moment, Ziras is driving what looks to be an almost flawless race, bar that error he made earlier through turn 9. But Sam Smith is just making that many more little mistakes. As you mentioned, they're really cutting into his time, as Madbird is also in the pits now.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I was wondering why... well, I'm still wondering why Goofball Antics... he was ahead of them anyway. Sorry, it's now Goofball Antics up into 3rd place. And no, he was ahead of them.
No, he wasn't.
What's happening? I'm not going
sure
crazy? Was Goofball Antics was behind both of them, if I'm not mistaken? Or was he?
Unless
no.
Yeah, I'm not particularly sure.
He was ahead of them.
He was ahead.
I just had a brain explosion. He was ahead of them. But,
so did I. Apologies for the confusion, everyone. And in the midst of all that, Sam Smith has now taken the lead in the first half of the first sector of this track.
Let's get a replay of that. So turn 1 looked like a lot easier than the previous lap, and he's very good at staying in touching range of Ziras through the mid part of the lap and then blasting past him down the straight. But unfortunately, he needs to do more than that to win this race, because he needs to get enough of an advantage for his pit stop.
That's exactly right. He looked a lot better through that braking zone this time around because he had just a bit more drive through the final corner and was able to pull back ahead of Ziras before he even had to turn the car in. So he made it single file again just to rub it into Ziras that he has the power to get past him on the main straight. But he's locking a brake quite drastically there through turn 11. And Ziras is all over the back of him once again. Gap of about 6/10 so far. Pretty negligible, but it's pretty close considering what Sam Smith's able to do at the front of this race over Ziras, in the BMW 320. But this part of the track does benefit those BMW 320s. They're really able to make the most of their lightweight and get around these corners as quickly as possible without losing too much time to the unfortunate forces of inertia and understeer.
Brenton Foley is in the pits, and so is Diesamaja and Pablo. So we'll probably see a resumption of the battle between Brenton Foley and Madbird when that pit stop concludes.
Back at the front, it's not too far between these two at the moment. The gap's still roughly the same as it was through the latter half of the last lap. So Ziras was able to really make the most of the braking powers of that BMW 320 and catch right up to the back of Sam Smith. So that battle's far from over, guys. Keep your eyes on it. But at the moment, the rest of the field is starting to thin out quite some bit, with the pit stops really shaking things up a little bit. Unfortunately, I can't really see on our timing screen which drivers have made pit stops. So I'll have to just try my best to remember which drivers are where on track, theoretically. But we do know that at the front, Sam Smith and Ziras are still yet to pit, as is Goofball Antics. Of course, those BMW 320s can go quite some time before needing to take a stop. So I imagine Sam Smith, it won't be too long before he has to pit. So Ziras will have a good chance to stretch his legs and really get some good pace out of that 320 with clear air in front of him stairs.
And those leaders having not pitted is part of what's stretching the field out so much, with everyone up to 5th place having been lapped on what isn't a particularly short racetrack. So Nether a lap down. He is one of the drivers who has made his pit stop, and so too Foley, Madbird, Desamage, and I'm unsure about Tyrrell. I know Pablo has come in, and I didn't see whether Rhodey had a pit stop. He has actually been through the pit lane at least once that I know of, because he got a drive-through penalty earlier on in the race, which I believe was due to corner cutting. And so that means that we're awaiting Roadhog, Goofball Antics, Ziras, and Sam Smith at the very least to come into the pits. But we know those 320s can go much, much deeper into the race than the Porsche 935 turbos. They went a very, very long race. Almost, well, actually, Goofball Antics made it all but one lap in Hollowham, and that was without a safety car.
Yeah, he did. We were watching his figures, and we thought he was going to be able to finish that race on a no-stop based on his fuel amounts that we were watching on his live stream that he normally uploads as he's doing his races. But he had to come in for a quick splash and dash on the final lap, demoting him from second place down to third. It was still a very good result for him, and he sort of saw it coming. He knew from the onset of the race that he wasn't able to no-stop that race, but it was just so close. It just could have been. Here at this track, I don't think they're going to be able to no-stop it, though, purely because of how much load is placed on the tyres.
No, but it's still pretty much advantage Ziras, even though he is trailing Sam Smith, but he's trailing him by less than a second, and that is going to allow him to make the jump through the pit stops. It was as much as 10 seconds earlier on in the race. Sam Smith had a very, very comfortable lead. He was pulling away. It seemed like he got into a rhythm, but as soon as the tyres started getting a bit old, and he gets a bit balked there behind Pablo as they make their way past the lap traffic, and that nearly allowed Ziras to make his way past, but they're coming up to the fastest part of the racetrack now, and Sam Smith will start to pull away in that Porsche 935 Turbo, only to have it all hauled back in again as Ziras takes advantage of the nimbleness of that BMW 320 in the technical parts of the racetrack.
Just caught a big moment from Rhodey there, who is unfortunately the bulk of his races consisting of lap traffic at the moment as he gets out of the way and receives drive-through penalties for going off the track. But he got unstuck over that turn 9 crest and shot off the track into the access road through the temporary walls and almost cleaned up the ambulance. It's positioned right on the inside there. Oh, no. So it was quite a drastic departure from the racing surface. He's still running at the moment. He'll be hopefully looking to get a bit more points on the board. He went a lot of races at the start of this season without registering any points finishes. He got his first points of his season at the 4th round of this, and he's been able to finish consistently in the points since then, purely by virtue of bringing the car home. So he does have 16 points to his name. But yeah, the unfortunate thing about being lap traffic in this series is a lot of these tracks really punish you very heavily for track cuts, and you do have to cut the track to get out of the way of some of these battles. And of course, during the race, if you register, I think it's 4 track cuts, and any more after that, you have to take a drive-through penalty, which takes massive chunks out of your race time.
And you want to be careful when he's letting those lap cars pass, because he did pick up a penalty in Watkins Glen for colliding with Nether when Nether was lapping him. And because he had finished last, the positional penalty that he was given for that indiscretion was turned into a points penalty. So he received 3 penalty points, which was taken off of his championship points as a result of that. So it's something that he's been made aware of to be more cautious about. And so far, we don't believe we've seen any indiscretions. But Sam Smith is now coming in to make his pit stop.
So it wasn't too long that we thought that Sam Smith was going to wait before he came in for his pit stop, and it'll be interesting to see how long he spends in the lane. Ziras now has a great chance to just stay out in front. Now that he doesn't have that Porsche 935 in front of him, you could really see that Sam Smith wasn't able to get too much pace out of that car. I think the tyres are starting to lose a bit of their life as we are at 23 laps now. So just over 17 minutes to go in this race. So we're well over half distance. So that's one pit stop done and dusted for the Porsche 935. He'll be on relatively fresh tyres for the rest of the proceedings here today. And because of the massive margin he had over Goofball Antics, he's still in second position. And as he pulls out of his pit box now, the gap is 20 seconds or so. And that delta time is really going to be inconsequential for Sam Smith. He's going to come out back on the track in second position, although his gap to Ziras is going to be a full minute. And I think he's not going to be able to claw too much of that back unless Ziras has a disastrous pitch stop, which I can't see happening. So Sam Smith rejoins the track in second position, a full 10 seconds ahead of Goofball Antics in third, but a full minute behind Ziras in the lead.
So it was about 45, 50 seconds spent in the pits as Rhodey gets another drive-through penalty. So he's 47 seconds behind Ziras, and he's going to have to start to eat into that. So he doesn't have a carrot on track. We've mentioned in previous races that sometimes he needs a carrot. He proved us wrong in Barbagallo when he won in dominant fashion, taking huge chunks out of everyone and winning by very, very big margins in the end. But his carrot right now is the timer. He sees 47 seconds. He needs to reduce that. Try and make it 46, then try and make it 45. Get it down to 40 if you can. So when Ziras makes his pit stop at the end of this race, he will be able to jump back ahead. But Ziras, meanwhile, will be doing the absolute opposite. He'll be looking at that margin, trying to make it 49, 51. And that's all he needs to do. So the battle is not against each other in wheel-to-wheel terms. It's looking at that clock and keeping that gap where you want it. So far, it's grown to 48 seconds.
If you are in the market for a battle that's almost wheel-to-wheel terms at the moment, Carshire is back to 5th position Nether, trying to stave off 6th position Brenton Foley. Those two are very close on track at the moment. Brenton Foley's trying to find a way past to get up into what would effectively be 3rd position once the BMW 320's pit, but that's a long time from now. So that is a race for 5th position as it stands at the moment. Madbird is about 6 seconds off the back of that pack at the moment, so that's shaping up to be a pretty good scrap. The Porsche 935, piloted by Nether, is really able to stretch his legs, of course, with all that horsepower behind it. But the Ford Capri is a little bit more nimble, and Brody's got another drive-through penalty for what I assume is speeding in the pit lane. No, he's well out of pits at this point. He's made another track cut, so that's very unfortunate. He's going to spend the most part of this race, I think, just going through the pit lane. I don't think he's going to see the starting grids again for the rest of this. We'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, the gap between Nether and Brenton Foley is just under 0.5 of a second. Varying a little bit. It's pretty negligible. Just a matter of Brenton Foley trying to find a place he can get that Ford Capri past him.
The unfortunate thing with those drive-through penalties for track cuts is that once you get one penalty for too many track cuts, every subsequent cutting of the track gives you another penalty. So it's very, very, you've got to tiptoe, essentially, once you've been given one of those penalties. Foley's got a very good run here on Nether, but Nether's got, of course, the power of that Porsche 935 Turbo to propel him down the straight. Look how much he pulls away from the Ford Capri. I don't know if this will be the battle for 3rd, because Goofball Antics is about 40 seconds ahead of these two. I think that's Nether having a slow pit stop rather than Foley having a quick one. So I think that they'll find that Goofball Antics is going to jump a few of these spots in the pits, which is bad news for Nether, but he's still nonetheless having a very, very strong run here today.
I think you might be right. He's not sure how quick that Porsche 935 is, though. You could see he took a very defensive line down the main straight, trying to protect his line from Brenton Foley, who followed suit just to stay in that tow. And they're still pretty close, as you can see. So I'd say Brenton Foley is the faster of the two at the moment out on track, despite Nether having the more powerful car. So that battle is far from over. Definitely keep your eyes on that one. Check the timing screens every now and then while we're focusing on some other cars around this track. The gap at the front between Sam Smith and Ziras is still around a minute, though. So not a huge amount of progress being made by the Porsche 935 up there.
So Foley all over the back of Nether like a cheap suit as they go into the final sector, but he's finding it quite difficult to make his way past. Nether's putting his car in all the right parts of the racetrack, making it exceedingly hard for Brenton Foley to get up the inside. And once they get to the main straight, Foley's got absolutely nothing to fight with, and they've just got one more corner before they come up to the main straight as Foley once again gets the tail out. Nether will be just thinking to himself, if I can just keep Foley behind for a few laps, he'll make a mistake. And that's no disrespect to Foley. It's just the way that he drives is not conducive to consistency in these particular cars. And look at the gap out to... we're not actually seeing the gaps there for Brenton Foley. It's 1.3 seconds there for Nether, whereas it was about 0.3 of a second only a few corners ago.
So the battle's on hold just for the time being between those two. Brenton Foley may find a little bit more pace in that car and catch up to the back, but we'll check back on those guys later. Roadhog, I don't think he's pitted yet because he's currently sitting in 4th position.
Going deep in that Celica, so he's putting himself on screen right now, and it's been a quiet run for Roadhog, but he's doing very, very well indeed at the moment, but time will tell where he slots back into once he does make his pit stop. A minute and 25 seconds behind the leader, Ziras, but of course Ziras having not made his pit stop. The gap between Ziras and Sam Smith has come down by about 5 seconds since Sam came out of the pits, down to 43.5 seconds on my screen there, so that is some fantastic laps there from Sam Smith, a 39.7 on the previous time around, whereas Ziras was down in the 41s, a high 41. I do wonder if that was traffic. He's coming into the pits though.
He certainly is. So Ziras is now taking his pit stop, and this is where we're going to get to see how much the BMW 320 benefits from that slower pit stop. That quicker pit stop, if you will.
Quicker pit stop.
In the BMW 320, I got my wrong word there. He's just pulling to the box now, and his pit stop begins. So Sam Smith is currently rounding turn number 13. He's still quite some way off that main straight. The gap is 30 seconds to Ziras, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get the pass done. He's also sitting behind the lap traffic of D-Samaj at the moment, so that might hamper Sam Smith's chances a little bit as D-Samaj gets out of the way. Very nice.
Still stationary.
Yeah, so very good from D-Samaj there to stay out of the way.
He's dropped. He's dropped off the wheels. He's dropped off the jacks, and he's on the move. Sam is coming down the straight. This is going to be mighty, mighty close. Sam Smith, I think, is going to retake the lead, but it is going to be very, very close. There he goes. Seconds in it, but Sam Smith recaptures the lead of this race. 3.5 seconds, though. Sam Smith will be a little bit nervous now with 10 minutes left in the race. Not a huge advantage, but an advantage nonetheless.
It is definitely Sam Smith's race to lose at this point in every sense of the word. He cannot make any more mistakes. It's as simple as that, because if he makes even the slightest mistake at this point, he's going to shake himself up. He's got the pressure on. That time has just ticked under 10 minutes now. So we've got 10 minutes plus 1 lap. So he can't make any more errors now, because if he does, then it's going to be a domino effect, I think. He's going to be making smaller errors leading into bigger ones. He gets a couple of wheels up in the air there. That's not going to phase him too much as he goes through turn 9 now. Rises over the crest, gets 2 wheels up in the air for quite some time. He's able to keep the car on the straight and narrow, and that gap's already up to 6 seconds now. So all he has to do is keep plugging away, keep putting away good lap times, good, solid, consistent times, and he'll have this one in the bag. But that's still 10 minutes away, and anything can happen before then. Ziras, meanwhile, has to really put his foot down and catch up to the back of that 935 as much as he can. But even I don't think that's going to help him if he can't benefit from an unfortunate mistake that Sam Smith might make. So there's going to be a little bit of a luck involved here if this result at the front is going to change. Goofball Antics, meanwhile, is still 21 seconds ahead, and as far as I know, is yet to take his pit stop.
Yep. No pit stop from Goofball Antics, so he has Road Dogg behind him, who also hasn't made his pit stop, and Nether is still ahead of Brenton Foley, so it looks like Goofball Antics has enough of an advantage. It's about 50 seconds over Nether, so he should be ahead of Nether when he makes his pit stop. And Road Dogg, of course, when he comes into pit, will be behind all of those guys. So it looks like Goofball Antics is on target for that podium position to keep that run alive. And that'd be 3 third-place finishes in a row, and it tightens everything up in the championship with Ziras in second and Sam Smith holding down a 3-second advantage in the lead of this race.
Yeah, so it's come down quite some time. So maybe Sam Smith's made a slight error somewhere, because now it's down to a 4-second gap where it was a 6-second gap this time last lap.
It's tight. He's tight. I reckon he's probably not driving his regular self, pushing everything to the limit. The thing is, when he does that, he's been making mistakes in this race. But now he knows that he doesn't have to gain 2 seconds a lap. All he has to do is stay ahead. And whether or not he's got that switch in him that says, all right, let's just take it a little bit easy, bring it home, and not lose too much time, because you don't want to lose brake tire temperature, it remains to be seen. So this is a mental challenge for Sam Smith. We've seen him win huge margins in Barbagallo, for example, and also the race that he won in Sebring, which was a terrific battle with his teammate. But here is a different kind of battle. It's all looking at the clock. He's just got to nail these last 7 minutes, nail every apex, and no big moments.
See, it may be a little bit wacky to suggest this, but it almost might be beneficial for Sam Smith to drop back a little bit and let Ziras by in the closing stages of this race, just because we've talked a lot about how Sam Smith can perform so well with a carrot in front of him. And we've seen how well he's able to stick to the back of that BMW 320 and fly past it on the straight. Although you've got to keep in mind how close the finish line is to the final corner. I'm not sure what it is in relation to...
Jeez, that was a bit rude from the back marker there. Made him go all the way around him.
Yeah, there might be some stern words there in the group chat.
I don't think he'll be too angry about that. He will have already put that behind him, as he has done with the lap traffic though. Sam Smith, now the gap is keeping around about 3.5 seconds. It's not changed much in the time that we've been watching it. So if he can bang out another 4 or 5 of those, he should be good. But of course, we don't want to give him the commentator's curse. Ziras will be certainly hoping for the complete opposite of that as he pushes to make it 3 wins on the bounce.
Regardless, it'll still be a very strong result for Ziras if he can place second here. He will not be able to pull as much of a gap at the front if he only finishes second, but it will become very even. It'll be, if they finish the way they are at the moment, Sam Smith will be on 135, Goofball will be on 145, and Ziras will be on 126. So they'll be relatively evenly spaced, with Goofball still in the lead of the championship, Sam Smith still second, 10 points behind, and Ziras sitting behind him by 9 points. So it'll space out just a little bit more, but those three will exclusively, or I think they pretty much are at this point, the only championship contenders left in this now that Birdo has dropped out for 3 rounds. So keep your eyes. Obviously, this race isn't over yet. Anything could still happen here. I'm not sure if Goofball's going to make up too much more space. I think third is as high as Goofball's going to go. Minus once his pit stop comes into play as well.
Is he trying to no stop? We wondered this last week and he made a fool of us on the last lap, but there's not a lot of revs coming from that 320. Maybe he's dramatically fuel saving. He does have a 25-second advantage over Roadhog. So if it was possible to fuel save enough to do this without stopping, then maybe he's trying to do that.
I've been hurt too many times by suggesting that he's been doing no stoppers when he certainly hasn't been. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's going to make a pit stop at some stage in this race. But he still has a gap of what I believe is 1 minute and 2 seconds to Nether. And with Roadhog still yet to take his pit stop as well, he'll be dropping back by a similar margin. So I'd say Goofball Antics will still be pretty safe in third.
I find it very difficult to read the numbers on
Roadhog pits now.
Roadhog pits, so that puts the pressure, takes the pressure off from behind. So he's got a free pit stop, does Goofball Antics. So it would make no sense really to save fuel because, well, what's that advantage? Yeah, it's 50 seconds over Nether, so he only needs to come in for a quick splash and dash. As the lead has grown actually between Ziras and Sam Smith, with Ziras losing 3 seconds in the middle sector of the current lap. So that gives Sam Smith some breathing space, and he'll heave a sigh of relief, but he'll certainly not want to be relaxing too much because he's still got to get it home these last 4 minutes.
Sam Smith crosses the line to start lap number 31, having completed 30 laps so far in this race, and the timer is now on 3 minutes and 40 seconds to go. So not a huge amount of time left in this race, I'd say. I want to try and do some quick maths to figure out how many laps this race is going to be, but I did mess that up quite badly last time out, so not going to make an attempt just yet. What I am going to do is I'm going to keep an eye on the battle for fourth, because that's still very, very close. And I'd say Brenton Foley's just driving conservatively, sticking to the back of Nether as much as he can, sizing up a late race move, not trying to make too many rash decisions at this stage.
The best result for Nether so far this season is 5th place, which he got in Barbagallo, and that was another strong run of his. He'll be hoping to better that with today's result. If he can keep it in 4th place, that'll be a very, very well-deserved haul of points for him. Looking at Goofball Antics' stream, it doesn't look as though he's lifting and coasting or anything. There's very little overlap, or there's very little, there is no overlap rather, very little crossover time between the brake and the accelerator. So that would suggest to me that he's pushing as hard as he can. And we'll probably see him in the pits very shortly, unless he has saved enough fuel earlier on in the race to make it on a no stop. But regardless, he is not under any threat from those behind him.
It's a very brief moment of contact just earlier between Nether and Brenton Foley, as Foley attempted a lunge on one of the late corners of the track on the last lap around. They just started their 31st lap as well, rather. So they're getting a little bit dicey now. Foley might be getting a little bit impatient, trying to make his way past. He may not be trying to... Oh, he's almost rear-ended him. He's almost rotated him.
He has rear-ended him.
He has rear-ended him into turn 4 there, I think it was. So Nether's not going to be too pleased about that one. Nether gets a little bit of a track up there. He doesn't get a drive-through penalty for it, thankfully, and he doesn't spin out in turn 4, which is very thankful as well. But he's going to be a little bit shaken by that, and now he's really going to be fired up, trying to maintain that 4th position. He'll have to drive the most defensive race of his life, though, to maintain it.
Yeah, the thing is, when you're driving defensively, you brake a little bit earlier, and every now and then that can catch out the car that is chasing you. But Nether just needs to park it on those apexes, essentially what he's been doing, because the power of that Porsche will keep him out of trouble. Now, someone is returning to the racetrack off camera there. We can't hear. It is Rody going another lap down, so now 5 laps between. He's
missing a wheel.
Oh, he really needs to retire then. If he's missing a wheel, there's no point in continuing because you probably end up outside the 75% rule. Yeah, you've got to retire. 3 wheels on your wagon, Rody. Unfortunately, that's it for him. So
he's still plugging along at the moment. He's still crawling through the gravel at 25 k's an hour. He's almost looking to see if he can get back to the pits and get a new wheel stuck on that so he can finish this race.
That.
No, you can't. You certainly can't. The time is under a minute now. 45 seconds left before we go to the last lap, and I'm just trying to figure out where Sam Smith is at the moment. It's going to be a 30... is it going to be 33 laps? Is it an extra lap after you cross the line?
No, he's coming across the line now, and he's going to start the 33rd lap. There'll be one more lap after this one, which will make it 34, as he's crossed the line with 25 seconds left on the clock still. But a 7-second advantage. Wonder what that does for Goofball Antics. He's taking it right up to the edge, to the end of this race without having made his pit stop. Still, probably see him in this lap, doing all but one lap on the first tank of fuel.
Yeah, so it's a very late run for Goofball Antics to the pit lane. I'm not sure if he's going to bring it around this time. He seems to be slowing through the final turn. No, he's not pitting this time at all. So he's going to press on regardless. He may even do a no-stop this race, but let's see what happens. Unless he has pitted and we've completely missed it again. I don't want to be the one to ask.
It has happened, but, well, we've got to speak about the race. I mean, I can't imagine where that pit stop would have come from because he was behind a lot of people who he's now in front of. And I think the only reason for that would be because of the pit stop that he hasn't made. So, anyway, that's the way I see it. Sam Smith is sublimely out front. Actually, sublimely out front. That gap has come down quite a lot in the last few corners. It's down to 4.4 seconds, whereas it was out to about 7 seconds. So, unseen to us, it was in the first sector. He lost a 1.5 seconds to Ziras, so he's had a moment there, and that'll be a bit of a wake-up call and a little bit of an incentive to Ziras. Very, very interesting moments here. Tense.
Very tense indeed. Sam Smith rounds the final corner now onto the main straight to start what we believe is the final lap of race number 8 of the of DRM season, ARW season 8, racing the DRMs here at the Algarve circuit. It is going to be a 34-lap race, and there's a gap at the front of 5 seconds and change. So Ziras is not going to be able to catch him on pace alone unless Sam Smith makes an error, which, fingers crossed, does not happen for Sam Smith's sake. He's looking very racy so far, though. He hasn't put in too many rapid laps lately, but he doesn't have to. He just has to keep it on the straight and narrow, keep everything neat and tidy, and he'll walk away a winner here today.
He's going to catch up to, he's going to catch up to Rody, and hopefully Rody is well off the racetrack. He's a bit of a liability with his 3 wheels at the moment. Just got another drive-through penalty, and he really ought to pull that car off the racetrack and into the garage.
Yeah, he certainly ought to. He's well off the track as Sam Smith goes through now, which is good to see. But yeah, he should have pulled that car into the track weeks ago. Or that car into the garage, rather, a long time ago, because it's, like you said, missing a whole wheel, which I'm not sure where it's gone, but it's definitely not where it needs to be, which is on the front left corner of his car. So
Goof hasn't pitted. Brenton Foley has got ahead of Nether, but it's only fleeting as Nether has a look down the inside. There's contact there, and Foley's nearly gone around. They're going to try and redress, but Sam Smith only has a few more corners remaining. Fantastic battle going on there between 4th and 5th, and it looks like Nether has let Foley go back through as he's still appearing in 5th place on the timing screens. But Sam Smith is going to become the first 3-time winner in this championship And he backs up off his 2 victories already, becomes a 3-time winner, and re-announces himself as one of the championship contenders. And a drive-through penalty for Nether as well. Desperately bad luck for him. What a bad way to end that race. It'll only lose him 1 spot, though. I think Madbird was a lap down. Sam Smith celebrates with some donuts. And look at... looks like Nether's had an accident there in DNF, so that's unfortunate there. Ziras finishes in 2nd place, and Goofball Antics, we believe, doing it without a pit stop.
I think what's happened there is Nether has gotten ahead of himself and thought that the race is finished after 33 laps when he did cross the line before Sam Smith came around to finish the race. So Nether was still on the lead lap, but he didn't think he was. He thought he'd been lapped, and as a result, he sent it straight into the wall at the end of the pit straight, thinking he'd finished the race, but he hadn't. So he's DNF'd, and that's very unfortunate for Nether. He copped a drive-through penalty as a result because it registered as a track cut, him shooting off the track like that. So I don't know how that's going to result in his race finishing up. Brenton Foley is going to finish in 4th position once he comes across the line. Goofball Antics has already finished the race. He's in 3rd position on the podium, so great podium there for Goofball Antics. Brenton Foley, once he gets around to finish his lap, will be in 4th. And Nether, I'm not sure what's happened there. He will finish this race in 5th position as a result of everyone behind him already having crossed the line. But that's a very weird situation. I'm not entirely sure what's happened there, to be honest.
Yeah, that is one of the strangest things I've ever seen, because although he's a DNFer, because of the point system, it allows you to keep the points that, or for the position that you finished in, if you've completed 75% of the race, and he's finished in 5th. No one has been able to get ahead of him with that failing to do the last lap thing, because Madbird was a lap down on him. So even though he's a DNFer, he will collect points for 5th place. What he did was he didn't give himself the advantage to repass Brenton Foley for 4th place, but of course he had that drive-through penalty, so he would have had to gain a drive-through penalty's worth in order to finish ahead of Brenton Foley anyway. So that's a messy end to what was quite a decent race for him.
Indeed it was. So we'll have to see if anything else pans out there. But we do have a race result for you, folks. It is Sam Smith who takes home the victory and is now within 10 points of Goofball Antics at the top of the championship table. Ziras valiantly finishes in 2nd position, 9 points behind those 2 in 3rd position on the championship table. And Goofball, the 3rd of the championship contenders, who currently leads with 145 points, finished in 3rd. So those are your podium sitters. Stairs, take it away.
Well, might as well start with our race winner, Sam Smith. It was an up and down race for yourself, because we thought that you had to put a decent gap on the BMW 320 of Ziras in order to make up for the extra time you had to stay in the pits. And it looked like you had it, and then you lost a bit of time before the pit stop, and then you gained it back through the pit stop, but there was always a few little mistakes there to keep us on the edge of our seats.
Yeah, I tried to have a clean race, but I just made a couple little spins and a couple little mistakes, but that battle between Ziras at the start was awesome. And I actually chose to only change the rear tyres this time. Usually I just go all tyres because it's usually too hard to think about. So my front left was totally knackered, but it wasn't too bad. But couldn't get anywhere near the times I was getting at the start.
Well,
yeah, you're posting some absolutely blistering lap times. I think you ended up with a 1:38.5 at one point there, which was a full second at least on what you could do in qualifying. So was it just a matter of you getting to grips with the car and the track as you raced around during the race session?
Yeah, it's like this car's like you'd need 3 laps to get really quick, and then you've got about 7 laps where you can go really, really quick, and then after that it just falls off. And that's where I always have my spin. You lose, I don't know whether it's tyres going off or what, but I just can't seem to hold it in that middle section. And that's where I usually lose it. So I was happy to actually hold on to this time.
Yeah,
Sorry, Stairs, you did have a question there, and I've interrupted you for a second time, so I'll let you continue.
Yes, well, it was very interesting for me to hear you made that strategy call, which you sort of nonchalantly breezed past about taking the 2 tyres instead of the 4. That may well have been the difference in the end. It gave you the track position when you came back onto the racetrack after the pit stop.
Yeah, I think it saves like 20 seconds, I think.
So huge moment in this race. Bold strategy, and it paid off. Congratulations.
Cheers.
All right, Matty, turning our attention now to second place man, Ziras. You've come off the back of 2 victories. You gave everything today. Very, very close to the victory today, but second place is going to have to be good enough today.
Yeah. Where do I start? I guess with qualifying, it was actually closer than I thought it would. And Sam's early pace was pretty good after our little tussle, and then sort of a lonely mid race, and I was until Sam had a big spin, and then we had another close battle. That was a lot of fun, and yeah, and then I saw he pit, and he was about a minute behind, so I figured I better change the fronts because the front left was just completely screwed towards the end. So I changed the fronts instead of the rears, and unfortunately had a couple of half spins, and which put me too far away to contend.
Well, there you go. It's unfortunate from the point of view of not beating Sam in terms of your championship prospects, but you did gain for the third race in a row on the championship leader, Goofball Antics, but still at 19 points away yourself, and Sam's 10 points away. So it's all closing up towards the back end of this championship. 2 rounds to go.
It'll be a doozy.
It certainly will. Let's have a chat to Goofball Antics. It was one of those races where now we didn't see you make a pit stop. Is that the case? Did we miss it, or did you manage to do that without stopping?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it? No, I managed to do that without stopping.
Congratulations.
There we go. See, I didn't want to bite. I wasn't sure because we didn't see a pit stop from me, and I was not sure if I wanted to ask the question and have it thrown in my face once again. But well done. You were able to put together a very good race there. And even at the end there, you would have had a free pit stop with the amount of margin you had on fourth place there.
Yeah, I was basically, once I realised that Ziras and Sam were just going to disappear and I wasn't going to catch them, I just figured I needed to keep about a 20-second or so gap to resist, and knowing that he would have to pit. And I was just keeping a keen eye on the fuel. I knew my front left tyre was just going to be angry, but I thought hopefully, I can sort of drive around that. But yeah, just keeping a keen eye on the fuel, and I think had resist not disconnected, I reckon I might have had him anyway. So I was sort of maintaining that gap, even with my boost turned down for the fuel. But we'll never know. I just got very lucky there. I can safely say I am #blessed.
Well, you are also #Mr. Consistent. You've finished on the podium for every single race so far this season, and it's paying off. You're still leading the championship standings at the moment. 145 points, 10 points ahead of Sam Smith in second place. Obviously, you've got to talk yourself up, but how do you rate your chances of being able to maintain that position through to the final finale of this season?
Low. Yes, like I said, I got very lucky today. Like, I didn't have the pace. I accidentally deleted my setup practicing late last night, so I just sort of threw together something last night, fine-tuned the gears a little bit tonight, and just got lucky that I was able to keep it on track. But again, like, if I may have got third if resist hadn't disconnected, but maybe not. So yeah, it's all luck at the moment. I knew this was going to be the case come the last few races of the season.
Speaking of luck, you nearly got caught up in that tangle at turn 1 at the start of the race there. I think you got a bit of a side slap from one of the cars who was rotating there. Thankfully, you're able to continue around your race, and you were able to bring it across the line in third position. So there's another podium for you, Goofball Antics. Well done to you, and well done to the rest of our podium sitters as well, especially Sam Smith taking out his third win of the season so far, Stairs.
Absolutely. It looks set to be an absolute cracker heading into the final 2 rounds of the championship. And we head to Brazil for the last 2 rounds, with the next race coming from Yacarapagua, a circuit that it's got some long straights on it. It's got some curvy bits as well. It may well be a little bit similar to this racetrack in terms of who it advantages, but it doesn't have the elevation, so it'll be a little bit less tricky from that point of view.
That's exactly right. A lot of hairy corners, as we touched on quite a bit throughout this race around the Algarve circuit. None of that whatsoever at the Yacarapagua circuit. Completely flat as a pancake. So that could be playing to some guys' advantages and playing to some other guys' advantage as well. Not sure how it's going to shape up. It's going to be really exciting, and I can't wait.
I can't either. That's about all the time we have for tonight. Well, join us next week in the penultimate round as we head across the Atlantic to Brazil. Until then, bye for now.